She's not drinking water. Wendy is a walking corpse.
Something is deeply wrong here. And the closer you look, the uglier it gets. It seems like the narrative we were fed about Wendy Williams is hiding a massive lie. Because whistleblowers are now exposing a timeline that is completely backward. Before a single diagnosis went public, before dementia, before aphasia, her millions were already vanished, frozen, locked down, and hijacked. Let that sink in. Because normally a medical crisis happens first, then legal intervention. But here it looks like the trap was sprung first and the medical excuse came later. And that is where this story plunges into pure darkness, because now Tasha K is speaking out and she is dropping fire. She is dodging direct liability, but she is mapping out a terrifying pattern. A pattern where unfiltered, loud voices are suddenly branded as unstable, where public perception is shifted before the truth can surface, and where the fierce interviewer suddenly becomes the one under interrogation. And here is the exact detail that is shaking everyone to the core. Wendy Williams herself was caught on tape demanding one undeniable truth. Where's my money? No confusion, no hesitation. So, how does a laser-focused demand for financial clarity turn into a total loss of human rights? And why does the exact same elite name keep echoing in these circles? Oprah Winfrey. No direct indictments, just heavy speculation. But in high-stakes games, smoke like this does not just appear out of nowhere. So the real question is, are we witnessing a genuine mental breakdown, or something being quietly engineered from the shadows?
But at the end of the day, the only person that can be blamed for this is Wendy.
It seems like the further you trace this timeline back, the less it resembles an overnight crash and the more it mirrors a calculated, slow burn designed for this exact finish. Because way before a medical label surfaced, way before the breaking news, sources claim Wendy Williams was already walking a dangerous tightrope over a dark abyss. Not under the spotlight, not for public view, but silently behind closed doors. And this is the precise moment Tasha K exposes a connection that makes the elite incredibly nervous. She isn't just analyzing the current fallout. She is tracking the breadcrumbs way back to structural cycles that didn't originate this season or even in this decade. It seems like the entire groundwork was already compromised. Substance abuse, immense stress, psychological manipulation all colliding at once. And according to sources, when those volatile ingredients combine, the detonation isn't instant. It smolders beneath the surface until one day the entire structure caves in all at once.
Her an addict now, it's not surprising. People have triggered, right? People have triggers. Which means, like, that's why they always say you are forever an addict.
Now, this is the exact moment where the narrative fractures down the middle, because on one track you have the corporate PR. Physical deterioration, mental deficit, a clinical diagnosis. But on the opposing track, a radically different theory is gaining massive traction. One that interrogates how much of this destruction was organic versus how much was systematically engineered. Because observers are clocking a highly disturbing trend. Every single time Wendy Williams attempted to regain her footing, an unseen force dragged her right back down. And it was highly covert. At times it masked itself as toxic romance. At times it masked itself as destructive habits. And at times it was heavy manipulation disguised as genuine protection. Which chains the entire mystery back to one specific figure who keeps haunting this timeline, Kevin Hunter. Because sources reveal his position in Wendy Williams' inner circle wasn't merely intimate. It was architectural. It appears he wasn't just a passenger in her orbit. He was actively designing it.
Marriage, she went into her marriage using. Kevin used to deal. Could you imagine Sheck selling you coke? And being my bodyguard?
Then the trajectory shifts once more, because now this transcends mere substance abuse. It crosses into environmental manipulation and the specific breed of entrapment that doesn't feel like handcuffs until the cage is locked. Sources insist Wendy Williams didn't merely falter. She was deliberately insulated by circumstances engineered to weaponize her relapse. Psychological landmines that were never cleared, enablers who were never truly locked out, and a relentless crushing weight that never once paused. So when the audience demands, how did the downfall reach this point? The truth is far from basic because it is obvious this wasn't an isolated misstep. It was a calculated sequence of traps, piled up, orchestrated, swept under the rug, until the damage was too massive to deny. And now, as the floodgates burst open, the real riddle isn't just what dismantled Wendy Williams. It is pinpointing exactly who cashed in on her never-reaching sobriety. It is clear that once you peel back the top layer, this media circus transitions from wild speculation into chilling reality. Because at this point, it isn't just anonymous sources blowing whistles. This is the exact moment the clinical autopsy enters the equation. And instantly, the gravity of the room shifts, because according to official documents, the mental prognosis slapped onto Wendy Williams isn't a minor glitch or a passing phase. It is documented as a severe cognitive breakdown, violent, irreversible, and permanently paralyzing.
Was Wendy. That's how a lot of the people that were close to her, viewing her, she couldn't remember the day, the time, especially, and it's alcohol-induced dementia, okay?
Official paperwork that should wrap up the entire mystery, correct? A clinical seal explains the erratic actions. A clinical seal legitimizes the takeover. A clinical seal buries the file forever. Except it is achieving the exact inverse. Because analysts aren't merely scrutinizing what the condition is. They are calculating exactly when it was validated. And that precise synchronization is where the chronology begins generating massive, terrifying gaps. It is becoming obvious that before the mainstream media ever broadcasted the term dementia, the chess pieces had already been moved. Financial access had already been choked out. Sovereignty had already shifted hands. So at this stage, the medical verdict doesn't register as the origin of the crisis. It plays like a cleanup operation executed after the trap was already sprung. And that completely alters how the public is dissecting this entire operation, because now the central debate isn't whether she is impaired. It is uncovering how long this card was held in reserve and who orchestrated the timing. And this is the exact loophole where Tasha K applies maximum leverage. She isn't invalidating the medical trauma. She isn't ignoring the clinical assessments, but she is fiercely interrogating the presentation, because it is undeniable that there were flashes, highly public flashes, where Wendy Williams appeared completely locked in. Interchanges where she was sharp, reactive, calculating.
He is not healthy, okay? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that. And yes, she may be normal today, but tomorrow she may not.
Which is exactly where the narrative starts to fracture, because families who have survived cognitive diseases grasp one harsh truth immediately. The fog isn't always constant. You get lucid windows, you get dark drops. But here is the massive conflict. If there are windows of absolute lucidity, then how much restriction can legally be enforced? And who owns the authority to dictate when she is competent and when she is incapacitated? That is where the boundary starts to bleed. Because the second a human being is branded as mentally incompetent, every single statement they utter can be tossed out. Every single interrogation can be bypassed. Every single warning can be manipulated. And in the case of Wendy Williams, there was one specific interrogation that kept screaming to the surface over and over. Zero emotion, zero disorientation, just absolute ice. Where's my money? And yet the machine never provided an honest public response. So now the audience is dissecting this from a different angle, because it appears two conflicting parallel universes are operating simultaneously. One overt, one covert. Overtly, a deteriorating icon, faltering, requiring intervention. Covertly, a hostage scenario where the handcuffs were locked first and the medical justification came after. And if both of those realities are happening simultaneously, then this ceases to be a medical tragedy altogether. It is a corporate coup. Because the second a medical label is weaponized in this arena, power dynamics flip. Asset seizure becomes incredibly easy to legitimize, and challenging the system becomes almost impossible to execute, which forces the entire mystery back into that same terrifying corner. What if the medical diagnosis is genuine, but the deliberate synchronization of how it was deployed is where the real conspiracy takes root? Because if the public mind is brainwashed first, then every event that follows starts to register less like a freak accident and more like a calculated script. And the deeper this rabbit hole plunges, the more impossible it becomes to separate medical protection from absolute asset dominance. It seems that once you hit this specific milestone in the investigation, the puzzle pieces start locking together in a way that is terrifying to watch. Because at this point, it crosses the line of health anomalies or strange deadlines. It is about a chokehold that remained completely rigid, even while every other variable was mutating. And this is the exact moment where the financial hijacking of Wendy Williams' empire becomes impossible for the public to ignore. Because whistleblowers reveal that long before the world ever comprehended her actual medical state, her grip on her bank accounts was already severed. Not step by step, not through a transparent legal battle, but instantly, silently, and the moment her financial lifeline was cut, the rest of her autonomy crumbled instantly.
Their lifestyle that these people are accustomed to, and having a guard.
This is the exact threshold where the narrative mutates, because wealth isn't merely currency in a high-stakes chess match like this. It is absolute autonomy. It is ultimate executive authority. It is the fundamental right to dictate terms. So the moment that leverage is choked out, what remains? Whistleblowers point to this specific moment as the true metamorphosis from a cultural powerhouse to a managed commodity. Because from that point forward, choices are no longer authentic. They filter through bureaucracy, red tape, surveillance, gatekeepers, and gradually, without a single public alarm being triggered, the icon sitting at the epicenter of the empire begins forfeiting command over her own legacy. And that is the precise reality observers are convinced played out in this arena. Because as the chokehold compressed behind closed doors, the caricature of Wendy Williams manufactured for public consumption underwent a radical transformation as well. Fewer broadcasts, vanishing coherence, manufactured chaos, forced isolation. And then the machine deployed the confirmation footage, curated snippets, brief sightings, highly specific segments engineered to validate the exact same profile over and over. Broken, detached, completely subdued. And the moment that caricature crystallizes in the public mind, it becomes the unbreakable status quo. Because from then on, every fresh leak, every staged photograph merely feeds the confirmation bias the audience has been fed. And that is exactly where manufactured perception completely eclipses the underlying truth. Because even when flashes of absolute brilliance occur, they are denied oxygen. They are starved of media traction. They fundamentally sabotage the script that has already been greenlit by the masses. So they vanish. And what survives is a highly polished, singular narrative recycled, fortified, and bolted down. And this is the exact moment where the psychological gravity of this tragedy completely crushes you. Because beneath the media static, beneath the viral theories, sits a real human being trapped inside the machinery. A pioneer who once weaponized the media landscape, now completely muted by it. A fierce voice that once interrogated the elite, now entirely silenced.
When that happens, it's hard to come back from that. You know what I'm saying? That's Alzheimer's. That's hard. That's
the moment you cross that threshold, an escape route becomes virtually impossible. Not merely from a clinical standpoint, but in the court of public opinion. Because once the masses swallow a specific caricature of your identity, shattering that illusion demands far more than raw facts. It requires platform access. It requires raw exposure. And in highly restricted blackouts like this, both of those lifelines are completely severed, which forces the entire machinery right back into the exact same loop. Isolation engineers the narrative. The narrative engineers mass compliance, and mass compliance makes the isolation infinitely easier to enforce indefinitely. And when that psychological loop plays out across a long enough timeline, it ceases to register as a violent coup. It plays out like a structure erected stone by stone, firewall by firewall, until the authentic blueprint of the human being is entirely wiped from existence. And that is precisely why the digital uproar refused to die down. It is actively gaining momentum because the audience isn't merely consuming content anymore. They are dissecting, frame matching, bridging gaps that were completely incoherent months ago, and demanding explanations to equations that completely break the matrix. Questions like, if a medical crisis is the ultimate justification, why were the financial handcuffs applied beforehand? If the official PR is airtight, why does the chronology completely fall apart? And if this is merely an unfortunate series of events, why do the exact same industrial calling cards keep manifesting? And that is the exact blind spot where a shadowy figure silently re-enters the matrix. Not with hard evidence, not with legal verification, but as an ominous architect whose name is constantly whispered whenever absolute power, media empires, and systemic leverage collide. Oprah Winfrey. 0 explicit charges, 0 documented contracts, just a singular titan that continuously haunts the perimeter whenever the debate transitions from the public distraction to the covert operators pulling the strings from the shadows. And that is exactly what prevents this file from ever being archived. Because the deeper you plunge into the timeline, the less it resembles a closed investigation and the more it feels like an active operation that is still executing in real time. Because if the entire horror show we have witnessed so far is merely the surface layer, then the terrifying riddle remains. What is still hidden deep within the vault? What ultimate mandates were executed before the world ever opened its eyes? And exactly how many of those covert operations are actively driving the reality we are watching play out today? Because in high-stakes games like this, the dominant storyline is rarely the actual truth. It is simply the script that has been funded the most. So now the microphone belongs to you. Is this a devastating medical tragedy, or a cold, calculated corporate execution engineered from the shadows? Drop your theories in the comments section below, because the more we weaponize our questions, the more impossible it becomes for them to keep the truth buried forever.